very well.
The notion of liberal interventionism has been mentioned as a way to deal with migrants. In most cases, that is why we have asylum seekers. Because one thing that this country should absolutely be ashamed of is the fact that over the last 20 years, we've gone around the world starting wars that we had no business starting. It displaced a huge number of people. And frankly, there's a gentleman named Mr. Blair who is responsible both for many of those wars.
We asked him to come on the programme this morning, but he wasn't available.
I'm sure you can't afford his fee. I understand it's extremely high. And Mr. Cameron, to be fair about this, and indeed Mr. Bush, these wars, this destabilisation of the Middle East and North Africa is what has caused this record number of people moving across the world.
Assad is nothing. Assad's.
Well, no, I disagree. Assad is part of, in fact, not Assad himself, but indeed the insurgent movement against Assad.
Part of the whole imbroglio.
Let me
ask you this. Do you think that people's attitudes to asylum seekers, which can be negative, and there can be a very negative portrayal in the media, do you think their attitudes to asylum seekers are informed by their suspicion of immigration? Do you think people conflate?
The two have clearly been conflated, and about 80% of people in this country have felt that immigration has been too high for about, again, the last 20 years, and no government has addressed that. Even this government, after Brexit, which was fuelled hugely by people's concerns about immigration, isn't addressing it. And of course, these numbers are conflated, but it's also true that the number of asylum claims are up by 40% on last year.
Daniel, it's all our fault.
No, it really isn't all our fault. It's not always about us. It's a very human thing to place yourself at the centre of the universe.
To women's disadvantage and men's advantage.
To your question, Nikki, is it a psychological condition? There's a very interesting study done about 4 months ago at the University of Oxford. It was covered by the BBC about a young girl that was having dysphoria, thinking that she was at times a rabbit, a cat, and other things. And it was actually found to be an immunodeficiency, not a psychological disorder, but an immunodeficiency disorder, which was causing the brain chemistry to change.
We can't take individual cases and then use.
Well, no, this was a medical study. This was a medical study at the University of Oxford. It was a completely credited medical study.
Susie,
it's not relevant. This is not relevant.
No, this was a medical study. This was not just one person.
Wait a minute. So, audience, put your hands up. I'm going to come to you. See what you think, Susie.
A recent study by WPATH, which had nearly 28,000 trans people who fed into that study, showed that the levels of persecution, violence, harassment...
It's horrific.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
Using one single study of somebody who thinks
No,
they're a
this was
rabbit
the
or a cat,
University of Oxford. You may have heard of it.
I know,
It was a
but
well-credited
one
medical study.
in comparison to nearly 28,000.
What do you think? Should we be able to decide or be who we are? What do you think, Jen?
Economically and, personally to society.
From a Conservative point of view, it's no surprise that Dan Jarvis's bill fell because Labour can't organise a protest in a brewery at the moment. But I think there is a real problem with child poverty, and I think Conservatives aren't doing enough about it. And to the asylum seeker question, I think most people in this country feel that at the very least we should be taking care of children. No, but I think at the very least we should be taking care. At the very least we should be taking care of children in this country before we look at other things. And we're not doing that.
All this thing about not having a biological nurturer, what you talk about.
Well, the fact is it takes two people to bring up a child.
That we're going to really deal with this problem.
A point left out of that list, though, is geography. And what is indisputable is that where you live in this country is a huge diktat of child poverty. And there is a disproportionate amount of child poverty in the north of England, and that really does need to be addressed.
This mandatory